Welcome everyone to the Adversity to Advantage podcast. After a long wait, I have been trying to get this guy for a long time, but our schedules are always clashing. I've got Ben Bidwell, also known as the Naked Professor. Yes, you heard that correctly. There are plenty of pictures of this man's fabulous naked bum online. Find him now. Welcome to the show, Ben, on this lovely Monday morning.
Thank you very much, Petra. Thank you. Yeah, it's there's no getting away from the nakedness, is there? I guess. No.
You branded yourself as the Naked Professor, so and you put exquisite photographs, I must say, all over the place. So it's a draw, I have to say.
Thank you. Do you know what? And I appreciate you saying that, because in this day and age, you know how much noise there is, and I think we need a USP. And my message is all about getting naked. Not just physically, but more to the point mentally, and actually removing the masks, bearing your soul. And I guess Instagram has come to the fore, and actually being able to show that through imagery as well was kind of my USP.
I love it.
So,
and
yeah.
I love that it is about something deeper than that. So yes, it's about masculinity, but and this is where we resonate, even though we're in slightly different fields. That thing about taking off the masks, just being ourselves and being direct, open, vulnerable. We're both sort of on that journey ourselves. So what is the work that you do? I know you do some coaching. Just give people a little flavor of what you do.
So I'm a mindset and purpose coach, which is my own term, I guess I've come to. That's fundamentally what I want to do. It's help people get their mind working, I say, to become their best friend rather than their worst enemy. And I think without training, it tends to be the worst enemy. And then as part of that, it's all very well your mind working well, but I think we have to live a purposeful life. Our mind can be functioning on all levels, but we've got to have purpose in our life. And I think there are certain things that our soul craves: purpose, creativity, showing up, trying, being vulnerable enough to put ourselves out there, to express who we really are, all that stuff. So yeah, those two kind of go hand in hand. I guess that the mindset is the getting into our head, trying to get our head working well, and then the purpose is into our soul, trying to fulfill our soul, because I think we need both of them to be functioning well, to feel alive.
So what is your purpose?
My purpose is to keep showing up authentically, and to share my message without fear of judgment. I think I've got a lot of buried probably emotion from the first 30 years of my life, where as a man I was taught not to express, not to show, not to be weak, not to be vulnerable, but to put on a masculine mask that was brave and strong and tough. And now I think since really the age of 30, I've gone on a journey where I just want to forget all that. I want to forget all that, and I want to be me, and I want to share my message and not worry what people think of it, and hopefully have a positive impact from there.
And what's fascinating to me is it hasn't been a lot of years. How old are you now?
37.
37. So about 7 years of catalyst moment of deciding certain things, and then moving into the guy who's on stage, the guy who's literally naked and authentically naked, and which isn't a long time to be totally. You seem totally transformed from how you describe yourself. And 30 years is a fucking lot of conditioning, isn't it? To undo.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time when I went and worked with a coach, and I'm just thinking, before that I was such a different person. And the first time I saw that coach, some of the things she said, I remember her saying, "Money won't make me happy," and I remember laughing in her face. Thinking, you said some interesting things, but I just fundamentally, the first 30 years of my life, it's all been about that. So when you drop bombs like that, it's like, wow, this is a totally different way of thinking. And now I'm like, how can anyone think money will make them happy? Like, that it's really not, it's pretty obvious, it's so obvious to me. But I think really what was going on is the first 5 years I was going through my own transformation, and without thinking too much about it, if I'm honest, I was just following this path and kind of learning and growing. And then the last couple of years have been me sharing it more. So how it is behind the scenes. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't know where it's going to go. So I was just behind the scenes. Not really many people knew I was changing. I was just doing it myself. I wasn't really sharing it. And then I got to a comfortable place where I was like, wow, this stuff is cool. And I want to share this with other people, and I want to make an impact.
And I love that awareness. And for people often do the overnight success thing, or like, you came from nowhere, or you're so natural on stage, or you do all these things so well. Like that, people would judge you or observe you based on that immediate thing. And you're like, damn, I've been doing this for 5 years internally in order to become ready to actually put myself on stage in this way.
Totally, exactly. I mean, like, you know, that it's that internal work that takes a long, long time. As you said, it's 30 years of conditioning one way, and it's a shock when someone says that that's not probably the best way for you to be. Yeah. So yeah, to rewire our mind is probably so good at its job because it's incredibly stubborn. So it's a lot of work to try and change it.
It wants to keep us safe, right? And so anything, it feels like a threat, being on stage, being yourself, saying something that's out of the box that you think won't allow you to belong in a group, you know, is terrifying. But what I think we both discovered is when you can consistently do that, you get a new tribe, you get deeper connections, you get people who see you for who you are, and you get that fulfillment and purpose. But my God, the journey to getting there is tricky. So I want to come back to like what were the like steps that moved you forward, but give our listeners just some context. So I want to go right back to when you were a child, because you're talking about like masculinity and these real kind of hardline conditioning that seems to have been set right back from then. So as a child, like, do you think your parents and the education system sort of set you up for the real world? Like, what were the things that were instilled in you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fundamental thing that I saw was about masculinity. And there wasn't any classes, there wasn't any teachings about this, but fundamentally what I saw in masculinity was that you had to be strong, tough, brave. I said, get the girls. In my world, it was sporty. You had to be a man, you had to look physically strong and kind of look manly. And that was kind of ticking the box. If you were that, then you were a proper man and you'd be popular, and that was where you would survive and thrive in that space. And, you know, alongside all that, there wasn't space for kindness, compassion, emotions. That was almost anti-masculinity. So my path was, I think, was shown to me that way. And yet at my core, my mum's a nurse and she's very kind, compassionate, empathetic, really loving. She's you know, a really just a wonderfully loving person. And I definitely had some of that in me. That was from her, you know. And I was having to bury a lot of it. I had to put on this mask to conform into what I felt was like the masculine energy to thrive as a man. And that, you know, wearing a mask hurts. It's tiring, and you're never quite in tune with your soul, and your soul doesn't like it. So for me, fundamentally, yeah, the conditioning that I saw was trying to play that role of a man.
Yeah.
Which goes
memories of making that internal decision, like this kind of sort of kindness versus toughness, or maybe some shame around hurting somebody in that process, like just as a stupid kid, just kind of going, ooh, kindness? No, I don't know. Do you have any of those memories?
I guess in general I played rugby.
Okay.
And my older brothers played rugby, and I thought rugby was a pretty good sign of your masculinity. You know, all the cool kids in my school, they were good at rugby. That's how it was. So generally around rugby, and of course, you know, on the rugby field, you're not being kind to people. You've got to stand up and fight and show no vulnerabilities, no weakness. You're indestructible and you're strong. Even at a young age, that was kind of the perception. So that general space. And I remember just never feeling part of that rugby community, really. I was desperate to, and never really fitting in with it. It's kind of quite a lad culture. And so that particularly for me. And there's a lot of brilliant things that go with rugby, so I don't mean to put it down, because I do still love the sport and there's some brilliant people in it. But the culture, I think, itself, I struggled with because there wasn't any space.
The banter and you know, if you did behave outside of it, it's all jokey, and it's all, you know, which reinforces this message that if you act outside of it, there's something wrong with you or you don't belong.
Yeah, and do you know what? I did enjoy the banter at times. Sometimes I did, and I think there is a balance. And I don't want to say no banter, no laughing, teasing each other, because I do think there's a space for it, but not purely at the expense of to say we can only be that, and we can't have a real conversation, and we can't be kind and compassionate and have real deep, meaningful, impactful conversations with each other. And it was kind of that side that was missing for me. But it's interesting, because when I can have those conversations, when I can go deep with someone, and we can have impact on each other, and we can be kind and compassionate, then for me, then the banter flows, because you built trust,
right? And
you get each other. So then you can be more playful with each other. Then you've earned the right to tease each other a little bit, because you know you're connected. So that's kind of where I sit with it. Rugby was almost a bit too much for me, just one side. and people were teasing.
Yeah, primal bonding for men. To kind of do that kind of ribbing and that, you know, the banter side of things. So I like that you're going, it's not about saying no to all of that, but like, let's also be allowed to have some depth, compassion, like let's be well-rounded, whole people, rather than just like this man version of, you know, old school conditioning.
Completely. And that's where I think we've gone too far one-sided with masculinity. We've seen the sort of the clearest masculine energy, and we've just taken that and we've forgotten the human energy, which is kindness, compassion, empathy. And we've just too far one side. And it's like, hey, actually part of being a human being, it's not just about being a man, it's about being a human being. And there's more to it than just that primal strength, bravery, toughness, and all that. There's human instincts as well.
And it could be argued that masculine energy can breed success in the kind of traditional sense of the word. Men are at the top, you know, money, women, like that whole thing. So there's this idea that there's a reward to behaving in that way. But I know for you, there came a point where you were like, this isn't enough for some reason. So talk us through like where this conditioning led you. What made you kind of go, I should speak to a coach, or like, I need to, you know, so we've got all your 20s and right up to your 30s of this kind of lad behavior. What was that like?
Yeah, so I actually, believe it or not, I actually did quite well at the lad's behaviour. I mean, I think some people could see through it. Sorry?
You learned how to do it pretty well.
I learned how to do it, yeah. And I changed my body shape, so I looked much more masculine. And I could walk into a changing room and kind of be like, yeah, he plays rugby, kind of, he looks manly. And, you know, there were girls and kind of, I was kind of cool. You know, I'd done a reasonable job at it. But underneath, I didn't ever feel truly part of it. But a big part of it was like stripped emotions. You know, I'd stopped feeling. And what came with that for me was that it showed up sexually, in that the thing with emotions, as you'll know, is you can't choose what you feel. You can't only just feel the good bits, and you either feel everything or you don't. And so I'd cut out the sad feelings. I think I'd stopped feeling the negatives and being strong and brave and tough. Nothing hurt me. But with that, I was stopping feeling the ecstasy. And so when it showed up sexually, what I mean by that is that I struggled for sexual satisfaction, or struggled to orgasm. And I guess, you know, an orgasm is almost that experience of, you know, heightened ecstasy, isn't it? It's almost like the ultimate experience in that sense. And I think I just sort of numbed out my body. And so at 30, I'd been through a few relationships or failed relationships, or even attempts to get into relationships, and that experience had hindered me. And at 30, I started to think, I find it hard enough to meet someone I really like as it is. I don't need this sex issue thrown in on top, and I'd like to have a family one day. So I started to open my eyes and think, I'm ready to try and move on from this. Because in my 20s, it was almost, people used to kind of, it was almost quite laddie. You know, people used to call it the gift. You know, you can carry on, you can be a man, you can carry on the whole time. But at 30, I was like, okay, time for change here. And
you just think it was at the time a physical issue? Like, I need to see a doctor, or there's just like a physical thing going on?
Yeah, I saw a doctor loads. I first saw a doctor when I was 21, and then I saw him again when I was probably 26. I saw a urologist, and I did all sorts of tests on everything, and there's never a problem. Everything was always, yeah, this is all fine. You know, testosterone levels and everything that could be. And, you know, it led me to a point where I was like, okay, maybe is there something? I know emotionally or mentally I feel okay. I don't feel like there's a real problem here, but I did feel empty, was the one thing. I've just felt a bit empty, devoid of something. And I probably would have just kept going on that road and staying exactly where I was. But I believe when you do open your eyes a little bit, the universe delivers. You know, if you put and I was brave enough perhaps to say, perhaps I want to change here. And my flatmate, when I was 30, he played professional rugby, and he had an injury, and he should be fit. In fact, the injury should have been healed, but he was still holding scars around it. And when he was running, he was still feeling it. So he worked with a hypnotherapist, and she would come to our flat, and he was often late, being the character that he was. And I'd often open the door and sort of awkwardly make her a cup of tea while we waited, and sort of said, "Oh, Ollie's not here yet. I'm really sorry." And have these kind of awkward conversations where I'd almost kind of joke a little bit about what she was going to do with him, kind of in my mind, sort of laugh at this craziness that he was getting himself into. And then sort of week by week, this happened a lot. And bit by bit, I started to think, that's actually quite interesting when you talk about it that way. I never thought of it that way, actually. And then bit by bit, a few weeks later, I started to think, well, hang on a minute. Have I got an injury here? If she's helping him with that, have I got an injury? And really reluctantly and kind of ashamed, spoke to her about it and said, look, any chance that you think you might be able to help me? She said yes. And then that was the point. There was the spark. And from that moment on, she started unwiring my mind and changing how I thought. And we didn't talk about sex at all. We just looked at my programming. She started to change how I thought and how I saw the world. And that was the start of the journey. 2 years later, I was studying to be a coach.
Yeah. And feels counterintuitive, right? Because you're like, I've got this sex issue, or I've got this problem over here. I want relationships. And then she's tackling it from a very but you're sort of desperate enough to trust that process, I guess, and be like, fuck it, what have I got to lose?
I tried, enough doctors and all the sort of rational routes, all the head-led routes.
Yeah.
So at this stage, I was like, I got to try, maybe I just think outside the box here. What else? And I'd gone on an entrepreneurial journey at that point. So I had read a few blogs and things like that kept talking about meditation and growth mindset and these things. And, people inspired me, Richard Branson and all these kind of iconic entrepreneurs talking about this stuff. And I was like, well, if I want to be an entrepreneur and these people keep banging on about it, should I at least open my mind up a little bit? So when she came in and was doing that, although I was kind of laughing, joking, still think it wasn't, I was also like, is this the opportunity for me to learn a bit more about some of that stuff I read about, maybe? Okay. So it was just a little inkling.
Yeah. So it became about and that's interesting as well. It is a little inkling. Sometimes people imagine these epiphany moments, right? Which are like, now I have my purpose, or now I know the direction I should go in. Like, could you imagine then that you would be doing what you're doing now?
No.
You on stage about this, about sex being a problem and masculinity, and you show up fully, and and so I can only imagine that you're sheepishly in the kitchen kind of going, could you help me?
Totally, completely, yeah. I would love myself to meet myself, meet myself 10 years ago. And yeah. I'd love to witness the conversation. And we wouldn't hate each other or fall out, but it would be an interesting one.
You would see the contrast, right? And often people come to me in a coaching or therapeutic perspective going, I don't know what my passion is, or I don't know what 10 years ahead looks like. And I say things like, well, do the next right thing? What's the next? Just sometimes all you see is just that little step in front of you. Oh, I know I've got to do this hypnotherapy. Don't know why. I know I've got to speak to that person. I know I've got to do the coaching course or explore entrepreneurship. Was that what it was like for you? Just a little step at a time?
Totally. And I entirely agree with you, because if 10 years ago someone said, okay, Ben, this is the goal, you're going to be on stage, you're going to be writing a book, you're going to be doing all these things, you're going to be posting these pictures of you like that on the internet, it's absolutely not a chance. Never going to happen, no way. But if as it pans out, I did one small step where I saw a coach, and then I did another small step where I started practicing some of the things she taught me, and then another one where I started reading some of the books, and another one where I studied to be a coach, and then I started, and it's always small steps, and suddenly 7 years later I find myself in this place. And it feels daunting. You're totally right. I think the way to actually move forward in your life is, have a dream, but what's the one thing? What's the thing you can do right now, however small it is? But just there's something that says go and explore it. I'm about to start singing lessons, and I don't expect to be on stage at Glastonbury or anything else. But there's something in me that says just go and explore. Go and explore, because I'm a terrible singer. I'm at zero, but there's something within me that wants to go and explore. And who knows, maybe I'll get to a point one day where I incorporate a song into my talks, and it's like,
oh, interesting, because that would terrify me.
And
I went to improv class recently just to get out of my head a little bit, right? Because I'm that's my safe zone. And what you're doing is you're pushing your boundaries. It doesn't always have to be in the logical, like on the route that you're at. Obviously, we can always learn to be better speakers or use our breath, like all these stuff that is aligned. You're going, how do I explore the whole me, every part of me, and just see what happens? Which is what I talk to people about, is practicing bravery. So it doesn't have to be the big thing, but if we can practice courage in small ways every day, then when the big thing happens, we're like ready. We've like pumped those muscles, right? And we're able to just know that the world's not going to end if we fuck up or anything like that.
Totally. Small steps, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Exciting.
You know?
So of course, I'm curious about relationships now. So this was part of your pain point, and your driver is like to have better sex and be in better relationships. What's that like for you now?
Well, I'm single and I'm not in a relationship, and it's been that way for a while now. So it's quite hard to say, actually, because my journey is evolving all the time, really quite quickly at the moment. So I'm in a very different space to my last relationship, was probably a year and a half ago, maybe more than that, maybe 2.5 years ago. I lose track. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know. And actually, I've been on such a journey with myself that there hasn't been much time for dating or meeting people. So I'm really interested to see how when I get into the next relationship, how that sits and how it feels.
I think you'd be approaching relationships differently than you have in the past.
Yes, definitely. I'm always absolutely. I feel much better equipped. I mean, I don't think I was capable, if I'm honest. I don't think I was capable of being in a fulfilling relationship through my 20s. Unless I'd done the work. Now I feel like I can be in a really fulfilling relationship. And I can't wait for that, but I wouldn't have been. No way before.
Was the story you were telling yourself about previous girlfriends kind of like it was their fault, or they just weren't? Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes we look back and we're like, oh, I keep dating these bastards, like they're all like this. And then when we kind of switch it around and do that, everything is my fault or everything is part of my self-development journey, like it flips it, doesn't it?
Totally, completely, yeah. And I don't think it was so much that for me, actually. But you're totally right. But I think because for me, it never ended on bad terms. It just was just a bit numb. It was just a bit like, she's lovely, but this is, yeah. And of course, because I wasn't feeling. And without the ability to go deep or kind of let them really see me, no one ever saw me. And I didn't see them because I didn't know how to really. There wasn't a deep enough connection to ever make it something really powerful. Whereas now, all I'm interested in doing is seeing people and letting them see me and going way beneath the surface. And that, I think, is where relationships can come alive.
Yeah.
So
Brené Brown says, when we numb pain, we also numb joy, right?
Of course.
And it's how so many people are living their lives. It's like, let me just numb out the tough stuff, watch Netflix, drink, do recreational drugs, like have meaningless sex, like just go into the cycle, the pattern, right? Or even jobs that are unfulfilling, but tell ourselves the story that I've got bills to pay and nobody's happy in their job and all that sort of stuff, right? That prevents people from experiencing the amazing highs, the joys, the connection, like all the good stuff. But you've got to be open to the painful stuff in order to be allowed to experience some of that. I mean, that's been my journey. What's that been like for you?
Completely, entirely agree. And it goes back to the same thing before, doesn't it, that we said about emotions. You can't choose what you feel. So you either feel all of everything or you don't. And so I shared an Instagram story Saturday morning where I shed a tear in the shower on Saturday morning because I was thinking about my talk Saturday afternoon, and I was thinking about what might happen and where I might go, and I had music on, and I just was overwhelmed with the feeling of what was coming up. And I wanted to share that because that moment of kind of crying, of tears, kind of shudder, your body sort of shuddering like, whoa, that makes me feel alive. And yeah, just that ability to feel and understand that when you are going to feel, there's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days, and you're going to have sad times, but you're going to have high times. That's what makes you feel alive for me. And
it sounds like the critical voice or the internal voice has changed, because in the past, had you shed a tear, first of all, you wouldn't have told anyone, much less on a public platform. There would have been shame surrounding it. But also it would have been something that you just would have ignored.
Yeah, I probably would have thought I'm weird.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the internal dialogue would have been, yeah, I'm weird, or I'm not enough of a man, or tell no one, or be self-critical, or that sort of thing.
Totally. But it's also, I think, being more in touch and just allowing it and embracing it. And rather than shying my mind away from it, going, oh, what's that? No, I don't want to feel that. Or it's let's go there. What is that? What is this? What am I experiencing here? Yeah, let's let it come alive. What's going on? Let's embrace this and really like, wow, here we go.
So what helps you do that now? So what are the routines or practices that you put in place, or does it feel like it's intuitive now, or what helps you do that?
It is intuitive. It's a really good question. It's not an easy one to explain, and I don't think there's certainly no quick fix that I could say to someone and then they can go away and do it tomorrow. I think it is a very progressive thing that step by step. But I was thinking about this yesterday actually. I think one of the biggest things for me is saying uncomfortable things, but meaningful things, because it's those things that allow you to go beneath the surface with people, and some people aren't ready. So you might say uncomfortable things, and it falls on deaf ears, and it's not going there. But sometimes you say something that you wouldn't normally say, and it takes the conversation to a new space, and then suddenly you feel more as a result because you see them, they see you. Suddenly you're connected, and you're like, whoa, this feeling is pretty. This is a pretty powerful feeling. Like, what's going on here? And I never had that, never in my first 30 years. But it's allowing myself to get comfortable with having those, saying those difficult things, those things that make me vulnerable, those things that let people see me. And I actually experienced the biggest learnings that I got from that was going on retreats or personal development courses, where groups of people would share openly about their experiences. And I just remember that feeling the power of seeing someone's heart when they're on stage in front of me, vulnerably sharing something I had no idea about them in a really powerful way, and then me doing it back, and then suddenly seeing everyone in the room and becoming a family, and like, wow, okay, this is powerful. I need to have this in my real life too.
So in a way, having a safe space to practice being yourself and seeing other people, in order to then have some of the skills or the knowledge of where it can take you to translate that into the real world, as it were?
Yes. Yeah. But actually, yeah, totally. I mean, it's a good starting point because it can show you the power of it. But in the day-to-day world, what I'd say is it starts actually with being okay with people not liking you.
I was going to ask, doesn't this go terribly wrong sometimes when you try and put yourself out there and you're like, oh, I didn't play it quite right?
You do, no, because it can go wrong. It can go wrong in that moment, but it's actually a learning that they're not necessarily your people. But I think it's always got to be done. If this is the thing, Brené Brown talks about this again actually really well. But if you do it from your mind, you're doing it from an ego place, and you're telling the people they're wrong and that this is how I am and I'm better, that I've learned this. You don't know what you're talking about, and this is how it should be. Mm-hmm. That's your ego. Your soul doesn't share from that space.
Yeah.
Your soul is kind, compassionate, empathetic, and it just shares your truth. So actually, you share from a very different space when you do that. And if you can learn to share from your soul, and if it freaks people out and they don't like it, then they're not your people, and that's okay. It doesn't make them wrong, or it means that there's 7-8 billion people in the world, and we're going to have different types and different things. So it's okay if someone is not instantly attracted to that energy that you bring. That's fine. But you might do it 10 times, and you might find that 9 people are repelled. Well, you're very strange. And then one person goes, wow, I've never met anyone like you before. I've never heard someone speak like that before. And then that connection, that one person, is so much more powerful than 10 sort of numb, average, okay, nice, polite conversations with the other 10 when you don't really show yourself.
You've got to really build up some resilience, though, to genuinely not care what other people think. Or at the beginning, you might still care. Like, the feelings might still come up of like, oh, fuck, they don't like me, or they don't agree, or whatever. The feelings might still come up, and we can choose for that not to affect our behavior. So sometimes people get that, like, somebody's laughing at me, they don't get it. Let me never do that again. Let me get back into my numb shell, right? And sometimes I always find that sometimes the feelings aren't there straight away, but the practice can be. And over time, the feelings catch up where you genuinely don't care anymore. Does that make sense? Like, I'm trying to help people think, what are the steps that they can take in that messy middle when it's like, I still do care, but like, I'm not quite where Ben is, where I don't care. Like, how the hell do I show up then? Right? But you've been on that journey.
So a big part for me is understanding what's ego and what's soul. Okay. So that thing that does care, that is just your ego. Right. And it's just your mind trying to keep you safe. It's as simple as that, because our mind is craving validation and a tribe, right? So naturally, it's drawing us to want us to be liked by people. But actually understanding that is just a programming, and our soul isn't bothered by that. So when we hear that voice and we're told this message, oh my God, this is awkward, this is awful, they don't like me, it's like, hey, no, that's just my ego. I don't need to listen to that message. And letting these thoughts, they're going to come in. These thoughts are going to come in. It's natural. Our mind's going to say this to us, but just letting them go, it's not right. And actually, it's uncomfortable, but I'm going to sit in this space, and it's okay that they don't like me, and I'm not disrespecting them, but it's okay, and I can go through this.
Do you meditate, or have you meditated? Because
yes.
It's quite a descriptive, like the thought comes in, but it doesn't have to control you. You let it go, but it still can come in, but you let it go. It sounds like it's connect. Like, what's your meditation practice like?
Yeah, for sure. I started meditating about 5 years ago. It was part of the journey. I started with a mantra, and I didn't feel it really sort of got there with me. Maybe I wasn't quite ready. But then I went on a retreat a few years ago, and there was much more guided meditations. And I felt that allowed me to get a much better connection with myself. So while the mantra allowed me to stay in a bit more of a neutral place, guided meditations allowed me to get to know myself better and feel more of my energy. And I found that a bit more inspiring. So different forms of meditation, if you like, but it's that's I think brought me alive, helped me get more connected with myself. Because it all starts with getting to know yourself. Really, everything we've said, if you don't know yourself, you can't authentically share it. You can't be authentic.
Because who are you sharing? What are you?
Exactly. So who are you really? And the only way I think you get to know yourself, I think, is through meditation or meditation practices, where you shut off your senses, you close your eyes, you shut off your ears, or you're not listening to TV or distractions. You're allowing your because when you do that, you've got nowhere else to go but internally, right? Rather than seeing and looking and hearing and whatever else, you're just feeling.
Yeah.
Where's nothing to see. And that's when you learn about yourself. So that was a big part of my journey, becoming connected to who I am through meditation.
Have you had to let go of friendships or people that were in your circle at the age of 30 in order to step into something else?
I haven't so much let go of, but definitely relationships have changed. I don't hold any grudges, or I don't blame anyone, or no one's done anything wrong. Everyone's on their journey. So there's no bitterness or kind of, I don't like these people anymore. But it's just, there's different energy with some people now. And I in the old days, I would definitely have really tried with them, tried to really make loads and loads of effort. And now I'm just like, different paths, and I let it be. It doesn't mean I'm disrespectful, and I'll be nice and polite with them, but I just know that we're not going to go perhaps deeper than that.
Yeah. So what are you excited about for the future? I know you've got so many things going on, but like, what's like, can't wait?
Just every day. If I'm honest, every day, who knows what's coming. I'm generally excited about trying to make an impact on masculinity and trying to show men they don't have to wear a mask. I know that's not going to change everybody, but if I can make an impact on some men who finally feel like they've got a bit more freedom to embrace all of them, not just the stereotypical masculine energy, then that's amazing for me. And just trying to make an impact. Just everything coming, writing a book, doing retreats, keep sharing. It all just excites me. Yeah.
So, well, first of all, where can people find you if they want to get in touch and work with you in some way?
I guess generally it's Instagram, pretty much, as everything goes through Instagram these days. It says The Naked Professor on Instagram. I've got a website as well, which has got a bit more info, but it's generally Instagram, yeah.
Cool. Yes, find him on Instagram. Do that, people. And what advice would you give to a man who, let's go back to your younger self, so that 30, but maybe just before that, say you were 28, so you're like struggling and you don't quite know where to go. Like, what advice, if they're listening to this, what is the first step? What do they need to know in order to just move into that first step to authenticity and taking a mask down?
Probably the single best thing to know at that point is that no one is perfect. None of us is perfect. None of us are perfect. Be vulnerable enough to accept that you've got things to work on and areas to improve. And if you can just be open-minded enough to take a step in that direction, to allow yourself to improve, who knows what you can become. But it's not a sign of weakness to work with someone to improve yourself. Just like working with a personal trainer to get better physically, working with a coach or reading books, self-help books, or whatever it is to improve your mind is an amazing thing to do. You can be better, and it's not a weakness.
So be open, be curious, know that there's a whole world out there of excitement and good sex. I'm just going to say that.
It's topical.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is deep connection, and sex is always better when there's a deep connection rather than just surface. And that extends into all relationships, right? Like when we can deeply see each other and connect in relationship, or even in casual sex, if we're able to kind of come from that place, that soul connection that you described so well, life is just so much more enriching. And I love your idea around meditation. So I challenge people, because I find it's challenging still just to sit with myself. I'm so action oriented all the time, that to sit with myself, even for 3 minutes, to just go inward and notice that my thoughts don't have to control me. They're just an echo of my past. And I can consciously make decisions about how I sort of build my future. Thank you so much for your time, Ben. I'm so glad that we finally did this. We'll obviously add your details into the show notes. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to speak with you.